far as the masters are concerned, they say we are past the turning point and peace is assured. But we still have to do it. As the masters look at the world, they see ahead. They see the tendencies, they see what is set in motion and how it will evolve is up to humanity. So, although they say peace is assured, we are past the worst point, we are past the turning point, and we are going in the right direction. Humanity as a whole does not know this. You understand? This is hierarchy, looking at the world. And they see the possibilities. They see all the strands, the different strands. When we look at the world, we see, is it peace or war? There are just two possibilities. They see the world much more complex. They see strands moving towards peace. They see other strands moving towards war. They see other strands who are going nowhere but trying to hold together the past and the future together and not yet sure of the way. And they see the different countries in opposition and full of competition between them and so on. They see all of that. And humanity is going through it but doesn't see it. They don't see the different strands. They just see what's in the newspapers, what's on the television screens, the latest event. And they exaggerate that latest event until it's as if it's the only thing. Whereas these see hundreds of different strands, slowly or fast, moving in the same or opposite directions. And they look forward and see the ultimate. And they themselves are assured of victory for peace. You know? Okay. But we still have to do it. We still have to make the decision of how to get peace. And we're not nearly there yet. First thing that would assure it, absolutely, would be the nations trying to establish a more just world. When they establish justice, they create the conditions for peace. Because without justice, there will never be peace. So it is up to the world to, not as Mr. Bush would have it, fighting terrorism wherever it raises its head, a war against terrorism, which they're determined, the Americans at the moment, to go on with. But to see what is causing the opposite of peace, what causes conflict and eventual war. And it's injustice. They see the terrorism, but they don't see the terrorism for what it is. I don't like terrorism any more than anybody else. I think terrorism is, as I said last night, an abomination, a canker in the world. Not something I would applaud. But you have to understand the cause of terrorism, because it will never go of itself. It has its own vitality and its own purpose, and it is the result of injustice. There are many causes, but the major cause is injustice. And when we begin to see this and begin to change when I'm talking we, it's larger than G7, G8 nations of the world, because for a long time they run the world for their own benefit, first and foremost, and then for what must be done to keep semblance of peace in the world. And so when enough people are forcing their governments to want justice and therefore peace, then it will happen. So it has to come from humanity itself. It is nothing to do with what is happening. 2012 happened to be the end of the ability of the Mayans to make a calendar. They ended at that time. And then they disappeared. They died. They died out from disease which were brought from the countries from the east to South America. And as today you can take a simple disease like measles and to Aboriginals in the Amazon desert, in the Amazon valley, and they die out because they have no protection against a simple disease like measles. Something like that happened with the Mayans, and they caught a flu or measles or some disease which for us would just be passing because we are become immune to it. We've had it for so long. They had no opposition to it, and they succumbed and they disappeared. And they left the remnants of their architecture, their sculpture, wonderful sculpture, and semblance of their civilization, which were taken over by the Aztecs and so on. And then the calendar was forgotten until today, when people looked up and said, oh my goodness, it finishes in 2012. Does that mean the end of the world? Why did it not continue? It didn't continue because that's as far as it went. If they had continued, the calendar would have continued. It has no bearing on our time at all. In December 2012, the sun will rise, you will get up, whatever time, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you'll go down and have breakfast, and you'll go to work or go and play, you'll go for a run in the park or whatever, just as before. Gradually over the next 200-300 years, we will conquer some of the major scourges of the bodies, of our physical body, the diseases like cancer and so on. We will not only find a cure, we will banish from the earth. Cancer is so old. It goes way back to the beginning of the Atlantean age. During the age before the Lemurian age, there was a terrible misuse of the physical function, and you had monsters. Man created monsters. Men became giants. They mated with animals. They created the most hideous beings. And so by the time the higher civilization came, the Atlantean civilization, which started millions of years ago, about 12.5 million years ago, especially the women of the early Atlanteans, who abhorred all that had gone in the Lemurian age, this terrible misuse of the physical function, the sex function in particular. The women of that time, over a long period of time, it didn't happen in a day, turned against the sex function. And they became ultra pure, ultra separate from the ordinary physical functions, one of which is sex. And that started the beginning of what today we call cancer. Cancer is like an inhibition of the body's functions, particularly the sex function. And it manifests itself today, weakened, of course, down through the ages, but passed on from generation to generation to generation. So many women today look at their mother, how many children did she have? How many of them had cancer? Did her sisters have cancer? did her mother have cancer, her grandmother have cancer? And if they say yes, they say, oh dear, I'm going to have cancer. They know it. It's passed on genetically, generation to generation. And then we bury the bodies. We don't burn the bodies. We bury the bodies. And we bury them in the ground. The cancer is still there. It's in the ground. The animals come along, sheep and other animals come, and they eat the grass in the cemeteries and so on. And it passes from the animal kingdom back into the human kingdom because they eat the meat and they eat the disease of cancer. And so it's passed on and passed on. One of the best ways to deal with it is to have the incineration of all dead bodies. Try telling that to the religious groups, but because they love the cemeteries, you know. But the only and best hygienic way to deal with it is cremation. And when all bodies are cremated at death, you will see a sudden lessening of diseases like cancer and tuberculosis and various other diseases, which are passed on for hundreds, thousands of years.